Welcome to my YouTube live, where we're going to talk about the growing call that the new tax law that was passed by the National Assembly and assented by President Tinubu should be suspended as a result of issues that are growing around it. You know that the new tax law, which is the result of President Tinubu's tax reform regimes, is going to take off January this next year. But there is a lot of controversies over that law taking effect. We are going to look at why the opposition against the law kicking off in January is growing. And that is what this live is all about. The reason why the call is growing and the opposition is mounting against the law taking effect from January. Now, we are going to look at why is people opposing to this law taking effect. And then after we look at it, we also look at the issue of the tampering of the gazetted version of the gas laws, of the tax laws, which is also another ground that people are kicking against this law right now, and that it should not be implemented. Okay? So we're going to look at some of the obnoxious additions that was added to the law, which they say National Assembly never put inside it, and things that were removed, even as we look at other things concerning this law. But first of all, we're going to look at the Nigeria's opposition movement, their position on why this law should be suspended. The Nigeria opposition movement recently addressed the press and stipulated the reasons why this law must not be allowed to take place. And we are going to look at that first before we go into the real concerns about the tampering, alleged tampering with the gazetted version of the tax law. Now, the national opposition movement has called on the federal government of Nigeria that it should suspend the implementation of the new tax reforms slated for January, saying that Nigeria is at a threshold of multi-dimensional failure. Now, this movement is championed by the key opposition leaders in Nigeria, like former Vice President Alhaji Atiku Abubakar, former Senate President David Mark, former Governor of Edo State, Odige Oyegun, Lawal Batagarawa, and Mr. Peter Obi, the former governor of Anambra State, saying that Nigerians are already suffering and the new tax regime will compound their woes. Now, while addressing a world press conference at the Yaradua Center in Abuja on Wednesday, the spokesman of the group, Honorable Chile Ebawe, said that they rejected the new tax regime because the timing is cruel and the logic is irrational. They say that the timing is cruel and the logic is irrational. Igba were flanked by other members of the national opposition movement, including Salifu Lukman, Aisha Yusufu, Solomon Dalong, and Kenneth Okonkwo, among several others, said that the fuel subsidy removal, naira collapse, food inflation, and rising electricity tariffs have already pushed households and small businesses to the edge. And they said, introducing an aggressive tax regime now confirms the widely held belief of a government dangerously out of reach with reality. As an oligarch and authoritarian, President Tinubu, by this tax plan, concentrates enormous powers in the hands of revenue authorities in a country with weak safeguards. Account access already being enforced, penalties and automated enforcement without strong oversight invite abuse. Take note of that, because when we go to discuss, I'm just reading to you what Nigerian opposition movement are saying. But when I go to tell you about the alterations that was allegedly made in the gazetted tax law, you will now understand where these people are coming from. Now let us continue to read the text of their press conference address at the Yaradua Center. They say, account access already being enforced, penalties and automated enforcement without strong oversight invites abuse. When citizens fear the taxman more than they trust the government, something is fundamentally wrong, they said. The opposition members said that they are with the Nigeria Labour Congress and the TUC in their efforts to fight for dignity and freedom of workers. The group stated, the situation in Nigeria today is terrible. Many Nigerians can barely afford food, transport, security, or pay their electricity bills and rents. It is sad that in a time as this, the Tinubu administration is preparing to roll out the most punitive and exploitative tax regime in the history of Nigeria. Even the colonial authority, in its viciousness, did not contemplate poor Nigerians the way Tinubu plans at the beginning of the year. The viciousness of this administration shows that Nigeria will be hit with these exploitative and inhumane tax regimes in January, when they do not have the fiscal space for such sacrifices. This exploitative tax regime points to the thoughtlessness of the Tinubu administration and its unyielding commitment to cater to the financial interests of the oligarchs to the detriment of the ordinary Nigerians, who he continues to punish with all manners of taxes and rising prices. Let us be clear. What President Tinubu is rolling out in January is not a tax reform. It is an assault on the livelihood of ordinary Nigerians, who he has not hidden his contempt and whose prosperity is not part of the agenda of this government. Now, the opposition said, according to the new tax law, all adults of taxable age, whether employed or not, must file a tax return between January 1st and 31st March 2026, after which sanction for non-filing will begin to apply. Take note of that. The opposition said, according to the new tax law, all adults of taxable age, whether employed or not, must file a tax return between January 1st and 31st March 2026, after which sanctions for non-filing will begin to apply. For owners of companies, you must file for all your employees, even if they are paid below the taxable bracket. Remember, you cannot make the filing if you do not have tax identification number. This is so mindless. In a country where over 70 million are unemployed, where people do not have good access to internet services, and where the level of service delivery from state institutions are poor or almost non-existent. President Tinubu has set up an exploitative racket against innocent Nigerians. This reads like a strategy from the infamous Lagos governance. Small and medium businesses are struggling to survive under a bad policy environment. Yet, Tinubu continues to pile pressure on them and does not provide any serious business support. By the new tax plan, Nigerians earning less than minimum wage will be heavily taxed. The government has removed all subsidies and exposed low-wage earners and the unemployed to rate shock. Still, the government intends to overtax them, creating damaging human development and truncating any prospect of serious and sustained economic growth. Now, this group, which said that government continues to ask Nigerians to give more and more, added that it allows those in public office to take more and more. Tinubu has brought Nigerians to their knees, but Tinubu will not relent till he brings Nigerians to the grave. We will not allow suffering Nigerians to be brought to the grave. We, as Nigerian opposition movement, have decided to stand up in support of those opposition politicians who issued the letter a few days ago, and the Nigerian Labour Congress and the TUC to say enough is enough. This tax plan must not take off now. Its implementation must be suspended immediately. This is not tax reform. This tax is a weapon fashioned against the economic well-being and social security of suffering and poor Nigerian citizens. This government is asking Nigerians who have already been brought down on their knees by the weight of poverty and squalor and have nothing left to give more. No, you cannot tax hunger. You cannot tax poverty, and you cannot tax people into prosperity. Igbawe said, since President Tinubu came to power, he has shown where his heart is. It is not with the Nigerian people. It is with the few oligarchs who are attached to his economic and political interest. The bad policies of the administration are intentionally so, because President Tinubu is not committed to the prosperity of ordinary citizens. He is committed to getting and keeping political power as a tool of creating wealth for himself and his family and friends. This is bad for Nigeria. As leaders of conscience, we cannot justify Tinubu's exploitative taxes against the poor in Nigeria because there is no evidence of prudence or due process in this administration. For the past 2 years and more, we have witnessed the most expansive state capture in Nigerian history. The nation's revenue agencies, like the NNPC, and the FIRS are reeking with grand corruption. The Tinubu administration does not recognize transparency and accountability. It continues to conduct its business in secrecy as if the Nigerian Federation has become Tinubu Family Incorporated. For instance, why would the Federal Inland Revenue Service enter an MOU with a French agency regarding management of Nigeria's tax regime and refuse to publicly disclose the content of the MOU, especially in the circumstances where Tinubu has made France his second home and business center? Does public interest not dictate that the Federal Inland Revenue Service publishes the MOU since Nigerians are worried at the prospect of the business deal with France compromising Nigeria's strategic national interest? Since President Tinubu came to power, it has been one allegation and report of one high-level grand corruption or another, starting with the mind-boggling corruption of the former Minister of Humanitarian Services, whose corruption cases have been swept under the carpet. For the first time in history, a leading Nigerian private sector businessman is openly accusing Tinubu's top regulator of brazen corruption. This has never been seen or heard in Nigeria. President Tinubu's idea of public leadership has no place for social contract, no place for due process or protection of national norms and institutional standards. The movement, which called for immediate suspension of the tax plan's take-up date, added that nationwide consultation involving labor, civil society, SMEs, professionals, and state governments should be initiated to discuss and decide the best way forward. Now, this is by the Nigerian Opposition Movement Group in the statement that they issued when they addressed the press, kicking against the implementation of the new tax regime, kicking against it. And they are not alone in that, because the Nigerian Labour Congress, the Nigerian Labour Congress and the TUC, they have all also reasoned against it, because they believe that the government did not do enough consultation before fixing the takeoff and every other things that needs to be done. And now we're going to talk about the opposition of labor, the opposition of labor to the new tax law. Because after talking about that, then before we go into the meat of this life, about the alleged alteration of the tax law itself, beyond what Nigerian opposition movement are saying, we're going to go into that also. So it's really an issue that all of us should pay attention, because no matter who you are supporting, even if you are supporting Tinubu, even if you are supporting APC, it's going to hit you hard if this thing goes ahead the way it is. Okay? Do not come and play politics here. We're talking about where it hurts Nigerians most. We are going to look at what the labor people are saying about this tax regime. that is taken off in January if it is not resisted. If it is not resisted. Because look at what the Nigerian Labour Congress are saying. Nigerians are already passing through a lot, especially including the workers themselves. Including the workers themselves. They are passing through hell. You remember when the debate of the minimum wage was raging, the workers were demanding for 250,000 naira as minimum wage, but Tinubu brought it down to 70,000. That 70,000 in real value is less than the 30,000 that Buhari was paying. Now, under the economic climate that was created by Tinubu's removal of fuel subsidy, flotation of the naira, you discover that that 70,000 naira minimum wage is worthless compared to the 30,000 naira that Buhari was paying. So if you are operating on that climate and they are planning to tax you and tax the business sector the way they are planning to do it, and they are also planning to do it with foreign partners that don't give a damn about you, and they are going to do this electronically. In fact, they are going to do this thing electronically. How many Nigerians have the power to fight with such under the present climate in Nigeria? How many people can be able to do that? Be able to resist it when they will be doing their things electronically, and they are doing it with a foreign partner. And that foreign partner is a member of the Tax Collectors Without Border. And the Tax Collectors Without Border are agents of the UN, IMF, and World Bank that are reputed for helping countries to collect tax as payment on interest of loan collected from the World Bank and IMF. So it is something that everybody should be interested in if we are really serious about the future of the country. So that's why the opposition against it is growing, and it will continue to grow because as new information begin to emerge about it. Now, the biggest threat, in fact, one of the key reasons, again, that this law, people are kicking against it, taking off in January, was because the law itself, the gazetted version, is alleged to be an altered version. That what was gazetted was different from what was passed into law by the Nigerian Senate. So that is one of the reasons why many people are saying that law cannot go on. First of all, Tinubu must come and defend himself and prove that what was signed and gazetted was the same thing that was passed by the National Assembly. Now, how did this came to the fore? How do you begin to implement a law that was a violation of the Constitution? A law that is an impeachable offense, and you expect Nigerians to obey it? That's why Nigerians are resisting it. Now, if Nigeria is a true democracy and we have checks and balances, if this can be proven, this is an impeachable offense because it is a violation of the Constitution of Nigeria that the law that was passed by the National Assembly was altered allegedly by the presidency. And a new thing is being presented as the law made by the National Assembly. In other words, the executive was impersonating the legislature. And kudos to Representative Abdul Masad Dasuki, who revealed this to the Nigerian public. And that is why democracy with diversity is beautiful. That is why Nigerians should ensure that this plot of the APC to have a one-party state does not work. Imagine if Abdul Samad Dasuki is from the APC and he played according to the party line. He would not have revealed this. And he was not, I'm sure he was not the only person that had seen it in the APC, but they kept mum. But he spoke out. And what he has revealed, and by the cross-checking that have been done by the Punch newspaper and others, things were added and things were removed from the Punch report. So this is a serious matter. You cannot therefore implement a law that in the eyes of the public is now an illegal law because it was not a law that was passed by the National Assembly. If what Representative Abdul Masad Dasuki is saying and what the Punch newspaper, the discrepancies they are seeing is anything to go by, that law ought not to take off until these matters are investigated and the solution found to them. Now, these are the areas that had been altered, the areas that had been allegedly altered from the one that was passed by the National Assembly. Now, these areas include removal of several oversight, accountability, and reporting mechanisms that the National Assembly approved. So the oversight mechanism put by the National Assembly, the accountability mechanism put by the National Assembly, the reporting mechanism put by the National Assembly were removed. The ones they put were removed. Why were they removed? So that the taxman will have authority beyond what the National Assembly had allocated to the tax collector. And why should that happen? Don't forget, there is an MOU that was signed by the Federal Inland Revenue Services with the tax authority of France. Now people are wondering, were these ones removed and those added to fit in to that MOU? That MOU between France and Nigeria. The additions and removal, were they done to fit into that? And let me also add, before I forget, that MOU, or Memorandum of Understanding, that was signed between Nigeria through Federal Land Revenue Services and the French Tax Authority, To date, it has not been made public. Peter Obi, the presidential candidate of the Labour Party in the 2023 presidential election, has demanded that MOU be made public. To date, they have not made it public. Now, if they say that Peter Obi is a partisan person, that they don't want to make it public, that he will play politics with it, which doesn't make sense, because the memorandum of understanding was a business deal between Nigeria and France, and all Nigerians deserve to know what was written inside it. They have not responded to Peter Obi. A Punch newspaper reporter has applied to the Federal Inland Revenue Services, reportedly, has applied invoking the Freedom of Information Act, FOI, to demand that the Federal Inland Revenue Services provide that memorandum of understanding in public interest. As I'm doing this live, they have not responded to the Punch newspaper reporter. So what are they hiding? Is what they are hiding related to this, what was missing and what was removed, allegedly, from the gazetted tax law? So you see the reason why people are saying that that tax law must be suspended indefinitely until a lot of investigations, a lot of things are done about it. They have refused to respond to them, to Punch newspaper. If you say Peter Obi is playing politics, if you say that the Northern Elders Forum, they are playing politics in making demands about that agreement with France on this tax issue, what about the Punch newspaper? The Constitution described the journalist, described the media as the fourth estate of the Rhine, to hold those in government accountable on behalf of the people. Now the Punch newspaper is doing their work. They have applied through the instrumentality of the Freedom of Information Act, FOI. Yet the Federal Inland Revenue Service is stonewalling on the agreement they signed with France. That's why Nigerians are worried. That's why Nigerians are jittery. That's why Nigeria is in the state that it is right now. Because something is about to hit Nigerians. The like of it, this country have never seen it. And that is going to be done through taxation and through the government of Nigeria. And people want to know what is coming beyond the theatrics. And especially after Abdul Samad Dasuki from Sokoto, a member of House of Representatives, was able to have the courage of his own conviction to tell Nigerians that they are being cooked through this tax laws. So we are still looking at the alterations, the alleged alteration that the Punch newspaper has observed. Then you have the addition of new coercive and physical powers for tax authorities that were not in the version that was passed. Addition of new coercive and physical powers for tax authorities, not in the past version. So things that were not in the version that was passed, that are very coercive, that was targeted against crippling Nigerians, in which they cannot extricate themselves if you go by this. One, arrest powers the tax authorities under the alleged doctored gazetted tax laws, the tax authorities were given arrest power. They were not given that in the original law. They were not given the power to arrest in the original law. But in the gazetted, the one that will be implemented from January, gave them arrest authority, power to arrest, which National Assembly never conferred on them. If that doesn't get you worried, nothing will ever get you worried in Nigeria. If you like, you can be playing politics, think that this is a political matter, until you go to your bank and what you see will shock you. Then you know the reason why everybody should be interested in what is happening in this country right now. Okay? So you are having a situation where new coercive powers were added, contrary to what was given by the National Assembly. So who put those powers inside? And whose interest is that going to serve? The National Assembly knew why it didn't give the authorities that power. So who smuggled it in? Who altered it? And what was the purpose? And among other additions that they added that is raising eyebrow in the new tax law is the so that's what we are talking about. We are still talking about the powers that were added to the powers that were added to the tax authorities that were not from the what was added by the government, by the National Assembly. Okay. So you therefore understand why it is important that these issues be addressed before anyone can talk about anything about enforcement of the tax law. Who added the power to arrest? Who gave them the power to arrest? That is in the new gazetted one. Since the National Assembly did not give them that power, who inserted it? Who inserted it? Imagine if this thing were Nigeria is a true democracy, like in United States, and you get this kind of thing. It's an impeachable offense. Even in Nigeria, it's an impeachable offense. But who will push for it when you have a rubber stamp National Assembly? Now, another addition they made that is raising eyebrow is the garnishment of funds without court orders. Garnishment of funds without court orders. Garnishment of funds without court orders. So your account can be garnished without court order. You know, that's an absurdity, that somebody's account can be garnished without court order. Do you know the implication that the taxman has the power to do that to Nigerians? Just garnish their bank account without any court orders. What kind of society does that, approve that? So they must be able to explain how did they got to the level of giving them this power that was not given to them by National Assembly. And then there is the compulsory computation in USD. That was not in the original. That was added in the gazetted. Then you have security deposits for appeals. So when you look at all this, you'll be able to realize why Nigerians and many people are saying there are issues about this tax regime that must be addressed before this law can take off, and that it should be suspended. In fact, indefinitely, that's what people are calling for. Indefinite suspension of this tax regime. Of course, it's going to hurt the government, because if what is being alleged is true, it's going to hurt the government if this doesn't go ahead. You know why? It is because the tax authority, or the so-called tax collectors without borders, they are working for IMF and World Bank. These are part of the people they are working for. And if they are part of, and the French tax authority is part of the tax collectors without borders. So if the information we are getting that is already there in the social media is true, it means that the government of Nigeria will not be able to get loan. And you know that Tinubu administration loves taking loans. Despite the fact that they claim that the removal of the fuel subsidy will make money available, there will be so much money. Because the removal of fuel subsidy was seen like the silver bullet that will solve all our problems. Once you remove fuel subsidy, there will be so much money. Money will be released. It's now over 2 years since Tinubu removed the fuel subsidy. They are still borrowing. They are still borrowing. They don't even have money to finance the coming budget. So they are desperate. And the election is coming. So they are desperate. They want to be in a situation to be seen in the good financial books of the West. They will be eligible, because if they cannot be able to, they have already passed this law. If it is allowed to take off the way it is, and Nigerians didn't resist it, even despite this alteration and everything, they will be happy about it. They will be able to convince the Western world that they have enough money, that they are good to go. They should pump in more money to them, that they are qualified for more money. But if Nigerians resist, because some of these things that they added were the safeguards that the National Assembly put. The safeguard that National Assembly put, they have removed it and put their own, allegedly. Now, Nigeria is set to become an easy prey for the French and for tax collectors without borders, which is an international UNDP, European Union, and others, Organization for Economic Development, OECD country. That's their platform, tax collectors without borders. That's their platform with which they collect taxes on behalf of African countries that have passed this type of reform tax law that Tinubu has passed. So he's desperate that this thing must start from January. They are already ready to begin to deal with Nigerians. But one good thing about Nigeria is that Nigerians are resilient. There are things they have been able to do in other Francophone countries and in other countries that when it comes to Nigeria, Nigerians are ready to resist it. And Nigerians, from what I'm seeing, this tax may be the biggest undoing of the Tinubu administration, because it's going to bring Nigerians more together against the government. Already you know that the Tinubu government is having the lowest approval rating in Nigeria's history. First of all, it was the most unpopular government to have ever been elected in Nigeria. No government has been so unpopular like the Tinubu government. And I can give you data if you are in doubt. Let me show you a little data to show you that Tinubu administration is the most unpopular government in Nigeria's history. In the last election, go and look at, do you know how much votes that that Jonathan used in winning 2011? Do you know how much votes that Buhari used in winning? The gap between Buhari and the Jonathan. Compare it with Tinubu. Tinubu barely survived to be elected Nigeria's president. The INEC, Obiora, I can see you. Obiora John, I can see you. So, look at it. In the last election, in 2023, Tinubu got INEC gave him 8.7 million votes. Atiku Abubakar, they gave him 6.9 million votes. They gave Peter Obi 6.1 million votes. They gave Rabi Musa Kwankwaso 1.4 million votes and several other votes. So if you add up all those votes, you will discover that almost 15 million Nigerians rejected Tinubu to be their president. So he has the least mandate. Nobody celebrated when he was announced by 3 a.m. that he was the winner. Besides, most Nigerians were sleeping that time. When they woke up, it was like a nightmare. It was like a nightmare. You wake up from sleep and you met a nightmare in real life. So nobody celebrated his government. Nobody rejoiced over his government emergence. Okay, so they are desperate for validation by the international community. El-Rufai pointed that out. That is also part of the reason why we are where we are today, including dancing to the tune of France in this matter of tax, which the government has refused to make public, despite the application for Freedom of Information Act. That, to be able to see the document. So they know that if they don't get this, if they don't push this thing and implement it by January, France will not be happy. IMF will not be happy. World Bank will not be happy. But the Nigerian people are not in the business of making IMF and World Bank happy. Nigerian people are not in the business of of making the World Bank, IMF, France happy. Nigerians are trying to survive. They are trying to survive. Already they are passing through hell because of the economic policies introduced by Tinubu administration. This will add more to it. It would have been much more tolerable to some extent if the law that was gazetted was the same thing that the National Assembly passed. Now we are being told by a member of the National Assembly that what was gazetted was not what was passed. And an independent investigation by the Punch newspaper have also discovered those anomalies. So this law is not something that Nigerians can go with. I believe that Nigerians will resist it. I believe that Nigeria, tax collectors without borders, they have been doing it in other countries and they have been getting away with it. But I believe that In the case of Nigeria, they may discover that a new thing, that Nigeria is different from other African countries. They should go and look at the history of Nigeria. They should go and look at the history of Nigeria. Nigeria is a country that no leader had been able to impose himself for a very long time without being resisted, be it military, be it civilian. Nigerians have always risen against dictatorship of any kind, be it dictatorship in civilian cloth or in military cloth. Nigerians have always bonded together. This tax matter, the way I'm watching it, from what I'm observing, is going to be one of those occasions that's going to bring Nigerians together to resist foreign colonialism, whether it is like Northern Elders Forum call it digital colonialism, okay? Whatever sort, Nigerians are going to resist it. And I think if the National Assembly is what they name, by now they ought to have set up a committee to start investigating the areas that were added and take disciplinary action against those responsible. Who smuggled in all these additions? Who removed what was added by the National Assembly? What can be done against those who did this to ensure that there is no repeat of it again? Imagine if this man had not been a patriotic Nigerian, Abu Samad Dasuki. Where would we have been? We would just enter January, everybody suffering, everybody crying. Already this country is passing through hell. Nigerians are suffering. Nigerians have never suffered like this in our history. Even countries at war are not suffering like Nigerians are suffering today, which is pathetic, given the enormous resources that we have. How can you say you are taxing the poor? You are taxing the poor directly and indirectly. Nobody is free. No matter how they try to do propaganda, say some people are exempted. Nobody is free. And the hardest hit will be those who are still worse off before this tax will take off. So the Nigerian opposition movement, the Northern Elders Forum, and all others that are calling for the suspension of this law, they are no fools. They have looked at this and they know that it is not in the best interest of the country. It is only in the best interest of those who want to continue to borrow from the French, from the IMF and the World Bank. Those are the only people who this tax law they are going to favor. Those are the only people that are happy that the French are going to come and help in collecting tax in Nigeria for whatever it was worth. So you can see that given the information available, it is very difficult for Nigeria, and Nigerians in particular, to accept this tax to go ahead. I don't know what you think about the new tax law they want to start operating from January. But whatever is your position, let's hear from you at the comment section. Because even as I'm about to close this live chat with you, conversation continues after at the comment section. Thank you for watching this video. And if you are new to my channel, you have not yet subscribed. Thank you for watching this live. And if you are new to my channel, you have not yet subscribed to my channel, please subscribe to my channel, hit the subscription button, hit the notification bell. When you subscribe to my channel and hit the notification bell, anytime I have a new video, you'll be among the first to know. God bless you. And please don't forget to like this video. And God bless you and yours. See you next time.